What's up, y'all? It's Yags. And first of all, I want to apologize for my voice. I'm a little bit sick. But yesterday, we finally had some movement in what I would call a lackluster offseason for the NBA. So yesterday, we had a three-team trade between the Los Angeles Clippers, the Miami Heat, and the Utah Jazz, where the Heat received Norman Powell, John Collins went to the Los Angeles Clippers, and then Utah got Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson, and a second-round pick back. So let's start out with the Clippers here, which I think, are the more important piece of this trade, in my opinion. They had Norman Powell, right? So they sent him away. I think this was actually a pretty good move in my point of view. Norman Powell's a 32-year-old guy. He should start regressing. He's never actually had a really good season besides last year where he was a 20-point per game scorer. And he was really good last year. Like, no doubt about it. He was a borderline all-star. He was basically a candidate to win Most Improved Player of the Year right before he got hurt. But I think the Clippers sold high on him, which I think is always the right thing to do, especially, for a guy that's a little bit older, shouldn't get much better than what he presented last year. And also, he's got a contract year coming up. The Clippers clearly didn't want him there. I think they kind of made a move that's really going to help out their roster in the long run, which is getting a true power forward in John Collins. So that Clippers squad really didn't have like an actual power forward. They still don't, besides John Collins now, of course, but they had like one guy, which I don't think anybody knows the name. I think his name's like Kobe Brown. It's something like that. But bring in John Collins. I think you have a much better rotation, and I think it really helps them out in terms of, getting boards, which I think is something that kind of killed him in that Denver series. John Collins is a guy which I do like him. I think he's a very, very good pick and roll player, especially, when you have Harden on your team, he's one of the best pick and roll players of all time, and having a guy that can play off the pick and roll is essential in my opinion. I know he didn't have the best seasons over the past couple years. I mean, Utah is basically a cemetery, right? Everybody that goes there besides Donovan Mitchell over the last 15 years kind of dies out. But after he went from Atlanta to Utah, I mean, his stats clearly regressed. But I think this could give him a chance to actually show something. He's also in a contract year. He opted into the deal with Utah before the trade. This is definitely kind of a prove-it deal for John Collins as well. And I think it gives the Clippers more flexibility in terms of who they can put out on the floor as well, right? I think John Collins, although he plays the four traditionally, I think he can also play the center position when you go like small ball, right? So you have James Harden, Chris Dunn, Kawhi, maybe Derek Jones at the 4, and then John Collins at the 5. So I think that can give them, maybe a little bit of flexibility. So for the Clippers, I really didn't think it was that bad, right? He comes in, he's a guy that can grab you boards. He can give you, 18 points a game, probably even more depending on how they're going to utilize him over there in Los Angeles. But I think he's going to give them another option, let Zubac get a little bit of rest. He's not going to be theoretically the only center in that squad. So I think, that was a pretty smart team deal in my opinion, which I think is a position that they were actually in need of. But the other thing that's really important to take a look at is that the Clippers were definitely one of the teams that were, going in for Bradley Beal. As we know, he's going to get bought out by the Phoenix Suns, right? So there were a couple teams that were involved that could possibly get him, and both of them are actually on this deal, right? So the Miami Heat were one of the teams, and the Los Angeles Clippers were one of those teams as well. And I think with this move, it really opens up, and I think it kind of shoots them up to the top spot to where they should be the team that's going to land Bradley Beal, right? I think Beal comes in, he's going to kind of take that shooting guard position. You're going to have a starting 5 of Harden, Beal, Kawhi, John Collins, and then Zubac, which is a pretty decent team, right? I think, when you have like Chris Dunn and then Derek Jones coming off the bench, I do think the backcourt defense kind of worries me a little bit, right? Harden hasn't played defense ever, maybe. And then you got Beal, who also hasn't played defense. But I think what we've seen from Bradley Beal over the past couple of years in Phoenix is not the guy that Bradley Beal really is, right? I think for people that don't remember, he was a pretty darn good player over there in Washington. And I think, whatever the scheme is in Phoenix, it wasn't a good fit, right? He hasn't played well, but I think he's a very capable guy of giving you, 21, 22 points a game. No doubt about it. So I'm very curious to see what the Clippers are going to do. They're also apparently going after Chris Paul as well. So that's going to be a reunion back from the Lob City days. But overall, I think the Clippers did the right thing. I think they sold high on an aging player and they got the most value out of it. And then when we go to the Miami side of things, I mean, I don't love it. I don't hate it either. I think Miami's a team that didn't have enough scoring on that squad last year. But I really don't know if Norman Powell is going to resolve all of their problems, right? I was actually thinking that Kasper Siakam might have been the number 1 over there, in terms of point guard. But he hasn't played well at all in Summer League. So I think they might go with the Tyler Hero at the point, then have Norman Powell at the 2, Wiggins at the 3, then, I don't know, Bam, and then Khalil Ware at the center. I don't know. They could mix up over there. You got Davion Mitchell in the mix as well. So I think they have some things that they can do. I just really don't know if Norman Powell is really going to make them a whole lot better. I think they probably will be better. They might get in, maybe a higher seed in the play-in, but I really don't see them being, a top 6 seed in the East, especially when you have, Orlando being much better. The Pistons should be good again. You got New York, Boston. might be in the mix. I mean, you really can't, although, you know, they have made major moves, you really can't count out Boston, I think, ever, especially with Derek White and Jaylen Brown still there. But I think the other thing that we're going to need to see from the Miami Heat, like I said, Norman Powell is also on a prove it deal, right? His contract is expiring at the end of the year. So I mean, if this goes well, is Miami going to renew with him, right? Are they going to extend Norman Powell? And if they are going to extend him today, he makes around $20 million a year. Is he going to want more, right? Is he going to want 25? Is he going to want 30? Do you really want to give $30 million to a guy that's going to be 32, 33? You know, at the end of his contract, he's going to be like 35 possibly. So I'm very curious to know what Pat Riley is actually going to do, right? Like I said, I really don't think it makes them a much better team. I didn't hate the trade. I just didn't love it. You know, I was kind of like midterm with that. But yeah, I'm curious to know how that's going to play out. And then on the Utah Jazz side of things, you know, they got Kevin Love. There's already rumors that he's going to get bought out and he's going to go to another team. The Lakers are a name on the list. I really don't think he fits the Lakers at all, in my opinion. The Cavs are also another team on the list. I've seen a lot of people talk about the Cavs being a possibility. I don't really know where he's going to end up. All I know is he's not going to play in a Utah Jazz uniform. That's 100% for sure. Kyle Anderson's probably going to stick around. He's probably going to mentor those young guys. He might even be, you know, I don't know, the starter, for God's sake. That Utah team is horrendous. I'm pretty sure the starters from the Summer League plus Larry Markkinen might be the starters for Utah this year, day one. But I don't know. But I think Kyle Anderson is definitely going to stay there. They got a second round pick. So, I mean, you got a couple assets. So when you really look at it, they traded Colin Sexton, they traded John Collins, and they bought out Jordan Clarkson and really didn't get much of a return from that, which I mean, I think it's okay. I feel like Utah is going to become more like a Brooklyn Nets type of team, that they're going to be more of facilitators. They've been kind of facilitating a lot of trades since the trade deadline. They've been getting a lot of picks, a lot of assets. So I feel like they're planning for, you know, the near future, maybe 2027, 2028. But I feel like they're going to be a cap space team that people can just dump their, you know, their bad contracts over there. I'm very curious to know what they're going to do with Larry Markkinen. I think that's super important, but I feel it's going to be tough because that contract is horrendous. It's so bad. And, you know, and Larry Markkinen, I like him. I like him as a player. I don't know if the problem is Utah or if it's him as a player, right? If he goes somewhere else, is he going to get any better? Because he's got a pretty decent skill set, right? But yeah, Utah should be really bad again. And yeah, guys, let me know in the comments what you guys thought, you know, from the Clippers side. Did you guys like it? From the Miami Heat side, did you guys like it? Leave it down in the comments. And as always, if you enjoy the content, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, leave those notifications on so you don't miss any other video. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.